In March 2011, the body of 34-year-old Emily Harris was found in a wooded area near her home in Durham, North Carolina. The investigation uncovered a shocking web of betrayal and jealousy involving Emily, her husband Derek Harris, and their close friends Jack and Monica Rutherford. By late 2010, a series of secrets began surfacing in the affluent Durham community, triggering events that would ultimately end in tragedy in 2008. Durham was the kind of town where neighbors greeted each other from their porches. Streets were lined with oak trees, and the scent of freshly cut grass filled the air. It was a close-knit community where everyone seemed to know each other, but behind well-kept lawns and pristine front doors many secrets lurked. Among the city's most well-off residents were Jack and Monica Rutherford, a couple in their mid-30s who appeared to have it all. They lived in a spacious brick house. In one of Durham's most coveted neighborhoods, Jack, a charismatic real estate agent, had built a small empire selling million-dollar homes, earning the trust and admiration of the community. Monica, equally respected, owned a boutique downtown, selling high-end clothing and accessories. The Rutherfords were the picture of perfection at community events. They were the life of the party, Jack charming guests with his wit. While Monica dazzled with her impeccable fashion sense and warm personality, however, behind the smiles and laughter, their marriage was far from perfect. Over time, the pressure to maintain their ideal image took its toll. Jack's long hours in real estate meant many lonely nights for Monica, who spent her time managing the boutique and attending social gatherings alone, although they still exchanged affectionate gestures in public and shared the same bed. Their emotional connection had faded. Across town, Derek and Emily Harris led a quieter life in a modest home. Derek, a technology consultant, spent long hours in front of his computer, while Emily, a freelance writer, worked from home, crafting articles for lifestyle magazines. In their late 30s, they had been married for over a decade and had settled into a routine that felt more like cohabitation than a marriage. Emily longed for the spark of their early years, but Derek's introverted nature and work obsession left her feeling isolated. Emily was a woman who craved connection. She poured her emotions into her writing, often penning essays on love, loss, and the complexities of relationships. Though her articles resonated with readers nationwide, they did little to bridge the growing gap in her own marriage. Derek, while not a bad man, lacked the emotional depth Emily needed. He believed financial stability was enough, failing to realize how much she longed for conversation, affection, and intimacy. The two couples met at a neighborhood barbecue in September 2008, a casual gathering organized by a mutual friend. Jack and Monica immediately stood out with their charm, effortlessly drawing people in. Derek and Emily, more reserved, lingered near the grill, making small talk with neighbors. When Jack introduced himself to Derek, they struck up a conversation about real estate and technology, discovering shared interests that laid the foundation for a future friendship. Meanwhile, Monica and Emily bonded over their shared love of fashion and books. The Rutherfords' outgoing personalities helped draw the Harrises out of their shell, and soon the couples began spending time together regularly. Over the next year, their friendship deepened. They hosted dinners, went on double dates, and even vacationed together in the summer of 2009. But it was Jack and Monica who introduced the Harrises to a secret aspect of their lives, a swinger lifestyle they kept hidden from their social circle. For Emily and Derek, who had long struggled to reignite their marriage, the idea was both shocking and intriguing. What started as mere curiosity soon turned into active participation, and by the end of 2009, the four had entered into an unconventional arrangement. By 2010, the dynamics between the couples began to shift in ways none of them could have predicted. While the swinger agreement initially brought excitement, it also introduced complications. In private, Jack and Emily grew closer, developing a deeper emotional connection than they had anticipated. Their encounters became secret, no longer part of the established rules. Emily found in Jack the emotional intimacy she had longed for, while Jack was drawn to Emily's vulnerability and creativity, qualities absent in his marriage to Monica. Unbeknownst to them, Monica and Derek had also formed their own bond. Tired of Jack's absences and growing indifference, Monica found comfort in Derek's steady and quiet presence. Likewise, Derek was drawn to Monica's confidence and warmth, qualities that filled the void left by Emily's emotional distance. The relationships within the group turned into a tangled web of desire and betrayal, with each person unaware of the true extent of what was happening. In May 2010, everything came to a head when Emily discovered she was pregnant. The news, which should have been a source of joy, instead filled her with fear. She had no way of knowing whether the baby was Jack's or Derek's. The weight of the secret was too heavy to bear alone, so one afternoon at the boutique, she confided in Monica. Monica listened intently as Emily nervously shared the news, her voice trembling with fear and uncertainty. She explained that she hadn't told Derek or Jack yet, and wasn't sure if she ever could. She spoke of her guilt, her confusion, and her fear of what this revelation could do to their already fragile relationships. To Emily's surprise, Monica remained calm, too calm. She offered words of support, suggesting that Emily take her time to think things through. But beneath her composed exterior, a storm of emotions raged within her. The idea that Emily might be carrying Jack's child ignited a fury and jealousy she had never felt before. It wasn't just about the pregnancy, it was confirmation of a betrayal she had suspected for months in the weeks that followed. Monica's behavior began to change. During group gatherings, her usual warmth was replaced by a cold detachment. She watched Jack's every move, analyzing any sign that might expose his affair. Her mind couldn't stop picturing Jack and Emily together, sharing something she believed was hers. By June 2010, Monica's tension reached a breaking point. She couldn't shake the image of Jack and Emily, nor the possibility that they were building a life together. The betrayal ate away at her, and her resentment grew with each passing day. Yet she kept her feelings hidden, aware that any confrontation could bring everything crashing down. What had begun as a secret romance had set off a chain of events none of them could control. The pregnancy, which under different circumstances might have been a blessing, became a ticking time bomb. What happened next would change all their lives forever. On the cold, damp night of March 3, 2011, the stillness of the forest near Briarwood Estates in Durham was shattered by an unspeakable act of violence. Emily Harris's lifeless body lay in a shallow grave, hastily covered with leaves and dirt. Her face bore the marks of a brutal attack, her future extinguished in a fit of rage. Her killer had struck her with a heavy object, leaving behind a crime scene that spoke of deep anger and personal motives. On the morning of March 4th, a jogger passing through the area noticed the disturbed ground and a faint metallic scent in the air. The scene was horrifying. Emily's pale hand protruded from the soil, as if she had tried to reach out for help. Durham police were immediately alerted, and by 8:30 a.m., Detective Claire Jensen, a seasoned investigator known for solving the toughest cases, arrived with her team. The crime had all the hallmarks of being personal. Emily Harris was known for her kind nature, her passion for writing, and her recent marital struggles with Derek. However, what the community didn't know was the secret life she led, one filled with hidden desires and dangerous relationships. The first suspect to be questioned was Derek Harris. His reaction to the news of Emily's death was one of visible shock and deep devastation. Friends and family described him as a broken man. Unable to comprehend what had happened to his wife, when detectives arrived at the Harris home that night, they found Derek in the living room, surrounded by half-empty coffee cups and crumpled tissues. His face was lined with grief, his hands trembling as he answered their questions. He insisted that on the night Emily disappeared, he had been working late at his office, preparing a report for a client. He provided the names of colleagues who could confirm his alibi, and showed emails with timestamps sent from his work account. His responses were cooperative, but his pain was evident. He spoke about his last conversation with Emily, a brief exchange about dinner, never imagining it would be the last time he saw her alive. Despite his apparent sincerity, detectives couldn't ignore the cracks in his story. Emily's friends had mentioned the tensions in their marriage, and Derek's withdrawn personality raised suspicions about whether he harbored resentment toward his wife. Although his alibi seemed solid, detectives' new appearances could be deceiving and made sure to verify every detail. Days later, on March 8, 2011, it was Jack Rutherford's turn to be questioned. Summoned to the Durham police station, detectives began peeling back the layers of his seemingly perfect life. Jack arrived impeccably dressed, his demeanor composed and controlled. To an outsider he appeared calm, but to the detectives, his calculated behavior suggested he was hiding something. He described his relationship with Emily as a simple friendship, emphasizing the close connection between both couples. But when asked more direct questions about his relationship with Emily, he avoided eye contact. Detectives pressed on. They knew there were rumors in the community about his closeness with Emily. Jack denied any inappropriate behavior, claiming they were merely acquaintances brought together by their spouse's friendship. However, the investigation soon uncovered damning evidence. Emily's phone, recovered at the crime scene, contained incriminating messages exchanged with Jack. In them they spoke of secret meetings and emotional confessions, undeniable proof of the affair Jack had tried to keep hidden. When confronted with the evidence, Jack's facade began to crumble. His answers became shorter and his attempts to deflect suspicion more desperate. Though he continued to deny involvement in the murder, detectives were convinced he knew more than he was letting on. The next focus of the investigation was Monica Rutherford. Outwardly, she had played the role of the grieving friend, expressing shock over Emily's death and offering support to Derek, but beneath her composed exterior, she was hiding her own secrets. On March 10, 2011, witnesses reported seeing Monica's car parked near the wooded area where Emily's body had been found on the night of her disappearance. This directly contradicted her alibi, which placed her at home organizing inventory for her boutique. When confronted, Monica was evasive. She insisted she had no reason to be near the woods and suggested the witnesses must have been mistaken. But the discovery of her presence at the crime scene shifted the investigation entirely. The image of the perfect wife that Monica had carefully maintained began to crack. The cold detachment with which she responded contrasted with Derek's grief and Jack's nervousness. The following days were a whirlwind of revelations. The tangled relationships between the Harrises and the Rutherfords painted a picture of deception and betrayal. Each new piece of evidence raised more questions. And with every interrogation, detectives moved closer to the truth. What they didn't know was that the tragedy wasn't over yet. The shock of Emily's murder was still rippling through Durham when, on March 15, 2011, another tragedy struck. Early that morning, police received a frantic call from a neighbor. Derek Harris had been found dead in his garage. The scene was entirely different from Emily's, but just as chilling. Derek lay slumped on the cold concrete floor, a single gunshot wound to the back of his head. There were no signs of forced entry or struggle. Everything had been meticulous, precise, deliberate. When detectives arrived, the crunch of their boots on the gravel driveway broke the eerie silence as they approached the garage. Detective Claire Jensen, who had been leading the Emily Harris murder investigation, now had a second case on her hands. But this wasn't just any crime. The execution-style shot suggested Derek had known his killer. This wasn't a random attack, it was personal. The timing also couldn't be ignored. Just as the investigation into Emily's murder was beginning to expose cracks in Monica Rutherford's alibi, Derek had been silenced. Was it a coincidence? Or was someone trying to bury the truth before it came to light? By March 16, forensic experts were meticulously reconstructing Derek's final hours. His house showed no signs of a break-in. His wallet and phone were untouched, ruling out robbery as a motive. In the garage, a dark, cluttered space filled with old tools and dusty furniture, nothing seemed out of place except for the slow-spreading pool of blood beneath Derek's body. Neighbors reported hearing nothing unusual the night before. Some had seen him earlier in the afternoon, taking out the trash and chatting briefly with the family next door. He had seemed subdued but calm, a man trying to cope with the grief of losing his wife. Hours later, he was dead. What disturbed detectives most was the absence of any struggle or defensive wounds. Derek hadn't tried to resist. This meant he had trusted the person who killed him, allowing them to get close enough to fire the fatal shot without warning. The murder was so calculated that it seemed like the work of a professional, someone who had done this before. Now the question was who had ordered it and why. By March 18, the investigation into Derek's murder began intertwining with Emily's. In his initial interrogation, Derek had been candid about his marriage and his relationship with Jack and Monica. However, detectives had always suspected there was something he wasn't saying. Now, they wondered, had he known more about Emily and Jack's affair than he had admitted? Had he planned to expose them? And was that what had cost him his life? Once again, attention turned to the Rutherfords. Monica's alibi for the night of Emily's murder was falling apart, placing her under growing pressure. Jack, on the other hand, maintained a composed exterior. But detectives were convinced he was hiding something. Derek's death, just as suspicions about Monica were mounting, was too convenient. Someone wanted to ensure he never spoke. On March 20th, forensic analysis changed the course of the investigation. Fibers from Monica's car interior matched those found at the burial site where Emily's body had been hidden. It was the evidence detectives needed. When confronted with the proof, Monica's mask finally broke. The pressure of the investigation and the weight of guilt became unbearable. She burst into tears and confessed. She admitted to killing Emily in a jealous rage. She claimed that the news of the pregnancy and the possibility that Jack was the father had pushed her over the edge. She couldn't bear the thought of her husband having a child with another woman, especially Emily, whom she had once considered a friend. Yet even in her confession, a mystery remained. Monica vehemently denied any involvement in Derek's death. Detectives pressed Monica further, but she insisted she had no reason to kill Derek. Her denial, combined with the calculated and professional nature of the murder, led investigators to a chilling realization: Monica hadn't been responsible for Derek's death. On March 25th, the truth behind his murder finally came to light. Jack Rutherford's financial records showed a series of suspicious cash withdrawals in the weeks leading up to Derek's murder. Following the money trail, detectives uncovered a connection to a known hitman, a man with a history of contract killings. When confronted with the evidence, Jack could no longer maintain his deception. Fearing that Derek would expose him, Jack had taken the most extreme measure. He had hired someone to eliminate Derek before he could destroy his reputation and business. The revelation sent shock waves through the Durham community. Jack Rutherford, the charismatic and respected real estate agent, had not only betrayed his wife, but had also committed murder in cold blood to protect his image. The trial in 2012 became a media spectacle. Every detail of the secret lives of the Rutherfords and the Harrises was laid bare in court. Monica's defense attempted to portray her as a woman driven to the edge by betrayal. Jack's legal team tried to shift the blame onto the hitman, arguing that he had never intended for Derek to be killed. But the jury was not fooled. Monica was found guilty of Emily's murder and sentenced to life in prison. Jack was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder in Derek's case and received a 25-year sentence. The hitman, whose confession helped seal Jack's conviction, also faced justice. When it was all over, the Durham community was never the same again. The Rutherford family, once admired, became a grim reminder of how secrets and betrayals could destroy lives. Friends and neighbors who had once respected them now saw only the people responsible for an unimaginable tragedy. For the families of Emily and Derek Harris, justice brought some closure, but never peace. The scars of their loss would remain, a reminder of what jealousy, fear, and ambition could lead to. The events of March 2011 cast a long shadow over Durham for years, a dark chapter in a town that had once prided itself on its southern charm and close-knit community. The scandal exposed the double lives of its elite, proving that even in the seeming normalcy of suburbia, secrets could be deadly. DNA testing ultimately confirmed that the baby Emily had been carrying was Derek's, but the child was never born, leaving behind a void of what could have been a different future, a story that remains a haunting reminder of how passion, betrayal, and jealousy can unleash unimaginable violence. Even though the trial had ended and sentences had been handed down, the shadow of the murders still loomed over Durham. The media wasted no time turning the story into a sensation, with constant reports about the hidden lives of those involved and the most scandalous details. Magazines and television shows explored every possible angle, from the Rutherfords' double lives to the mystery of Emily's pregnancy. Friends and neighbors who had once admired Jack and Monica now avoided saying their names. Monica's boutique shut down permanently, Jack's real estate business collapsed, and their once prized home sat abandoned, a grim reminder of what had happened. The Harris house was also left empty. With Emily and Derek gone, there was no reason for anyone to live there. Derek's family took care of selling the property, but for months no one wanted to buy it. Many believed it still carried the ghosts of the tragedy. Over time, life in Durham moved on. New families arrived, new businesses flourished, and the community tried to leave the scandal behind. But for those who had known Emily and Derek, the past never fully disappeared. In prison, Monica spent her first years in isolation. At first, she refused to speak to other inmates and rejected visits from her family. She knew she had ruined her life in a jealous rage, but she couldn't find peace with what she had done. At night, she relived the moment she struck Emily, the look of horror on her face before it was all over. No matter how many times she tried to justify it, the guilt haunted her. Jack, on the other hand, tried to maintain a sense of control in prison. He clung to the belief that he could get out before serving his full sentence. Convinced that with good behavior and the right legal team, he would one day regain his freedom. But reality was different. His former friends and business partners had abandoned him, his reputation was in ruins, and outside prison he had nothing left. The years passed, but the story of Emily and Derek was never entirely forgotten. Occasionally someone would come across an old article about the case and share it in true crime forums. Documentaries and podcasts revisited the story, analyzing every detail with theories and speculation. What unsettled people most was how a story of love and friendship had turned into a game of deceit, betrayal, and murder. No one could have imagined that two couples, who at first seemed to be nothing more than dinner companions making casual conversation, would end up at the center of a murder scandal. The secrets they had tried to keep for years had ultimately destroyed them, and while Durham tried to move forward, the truth remained, buried beneath the surface, waiting to be remembered. The years continued to pass, but the impact of Emily and Derek Harris's murders never completely faded. Though Durham tried to heal, the story lingered in collective memory. Some said the Harris house was cursed, that at night whispers could be heard in the empty property, as if shadows from the past refused to dissipate. Others simply avoided mentioning the case, as if ignoring it could erase the stain it had left on their community. In prison, Monica Rutherford became a ghost of herself. The first years were the hardest. She knew she would never be free again, that she had lost everything in a moment of jealousy and desperation. Not a day passed without her remembering the moment she took Emily's life. The guilt consumed her. She tried writing letters to Emily's family to beg for forgiveness. But she never received a response. She knew she didn't deserve it. Jack, however, never accepted his fate. During his first years in prison, he filed multiple appeals, convinced he still had a chance to get out before serving his full sentence. But every attempt failed. Over time, his arrogance crumbled, and he was reduced to the shadow of the man he once was. The friends who once admired him had forgotten him, his business had vanished, and his name had become synonymous with scandal and betrayal. Meanwhile, the families of Emily and Derek tried to move on. Emily's parents, devastated by the loss of their daughter, moved away from Durham, unable to live with the memories of what had happened. Derek's parents did the same, but not before ensuring that their son and daughter-in-law were remembered for who they had been before their lives were destroyed by betrayal. The years continued passing. Homes in Durham changed owners, faces in the community evolved. And the case of the Harrises and the Rutherfords was no longer in the spotlight. Yet the story never truly disappeared. Every so often, someone stumbled upon an online article about the scandal. A documentary resurfaced with new theories, or a podcast reignited interest in the crime. Monica Rutherford died in prison 20 years after her conviction, with no one to claim her body. Jack Rutherford served his sentence and was released after 25 years. No one was waiting for him. No one welcomed him. He left Durham without looking back, a man forgotten by the world. The Harris house was eventually sold to a new family, unaware of its dark history. To them, it was just another home in a quiet neighborhood. But for those who remembered, the house remained a reminder of what had once happened in Durham, a story of passion, jealousy, and death, which began as a friendship and ended in tragedy. Time moved on. Durham changed, its people changed. But the secrets that once destroyed so many lives remained, hidden among its streets, buried in the corners of collective memory. And even though no one spoke of them anymore, they were still there. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and like this video for more true crime video. Don't forget to leave your thoughts and theories in the comments section below. Take care and see you in the next video.